In a city where power rules and betrayal hides behind every smile, one woman's ordinary life is about to collide with the most dangerous man she has ever met. Elara Vance is a single mother, fighting to survive for her daughter, unaware that the drinks she serves at a luxurious hotel could be her last. Kael the wolf Volkov, feared, ruthless, and untouchable, watches her, not as prey, but as the one person worth protecting. When a billionaire predator slips poison into her glass, Kael intervenes with deadly precision, saving her life but pulling her into a world of violence, obsession, and forbidden desire. Now every heartbeat is a battle. Every touch is temptation. Every secret could cost them everything. In a city drenched in blood and lies, can love survive when the stakes are life, death, and revenge? Elara thought she was just surviving, but with Kael, she learns that surviving may not be enough. Rain hammered the glass walls of La Verona Hotel, each drop catching the city lights until the storm itself glittered. Outside, Verona City breathed in neon and sin. Inside, violins swelled beneath chandeliers bright as captured stars. Waiters glided like ghosts through perfume and laughter. Money spoke here, quietly, arrogantly. Elara Vance moved among them, a dark silhouette in a crisp uniform and cheap shoes polished to their last shine. The tray in her hands trembled whenever a laugh burst too close. She forced a smile, the kind that hurt the cheeks. Her mind was back in her small apartment, with Lily's tiny shoes by the door, and the neighbor's promise to listen for her daughter's cries if the thunder grew too loud. Rent waited like a wolf at the edge of thought, and she could almost hear it growl. A drop of champagne slid down a glass flute, reflecting her own tired eyes. For one dizzy heartbeat, she wished she could be one of the women twirling in silk under the chandelier, people who had never counted coins for bread. Then she inhaled and straightened her spine. Dreaming was expensive. From the mezzanine above, Kael Volkov watched the crowd as if it were his empire, and in many ways it was. His suit was cut in a language of power, black, immaculate, silent. Under the gold light, his eyes looked almost silver, and when he leaned on the rail, the movement alone quieted two nearby men who knew better than to speak while the wolf surveyed. Kael's world was built on precision. Nothing escaped his notice. The nervous blink of a rival, the careless boast of a partner. Yet tonight, something else caught him. The small, tired waitress moving through the room like a flicker of defiance in a place that devoured innocence. He didn't understand why he watched her. He only knew that he did. Below, Julian Thorne entered the ballroom, wrapped in charm and arrogance. His laughter cut through the music, drawing eyes the way a flame draws moths. He found Elara near the bar, offered a compliment that sounded like a purchase, and kept talking even when she tried to step away. Kael's gaze sharpened. He saw Julian's hand dip briefly toward a pocket, saw the sleight of fingers over the rim of her glass. A spark of cold fury slid through him. He descended the staircase slowly, each step measured, the storm outside echoing his heartbeat. The crowd parted instinctively, men in tuxedos stepping aside without knowing why. By the time he reached the marble floor, Julian was already raising the poisoned glass toward Elara. A single hand intercepted it. Kael's. "Don't. Drink." The words were low, flat, and heavy enough to still the air. Elara froze, startled by the stranger's sudden nearness, by the authority that wrapped around the words. Julian tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "Excuse me? We were—" Kael didn't let him finish. His eyes, pale and unblinking, found Elara's. "Walk away." Something in his tone, protection or command, or both, made her obey. The tray wobbled in her hands as she backed toward the corridor. Music faltered, uncertain. The crowd sensed tension but couldn't name it. Behind her, Kael's voice changed, dropping to ice. "Julian, we need to talk." The conversation that followed was short, quiet, and ended when the sound of breaking glass and a muffled shout spilled from the back hallway. Guests turned, murmuring. A violin screeched to silence. Elara's curiosity betrayed her. She stepped away from the corridor's light, heart hammering, and pressed herself against the cold wall. The smell of gunpowder drifted through the air, faint but unmistakable. She peeked around the corner, breath shallow. Kael stood in the half-dark, coat unbuttoned, a gun lowered at his side. Julian lay on the floor, motionless but alive, a thin tray eyes, full of blood tracing across the white tile. The scene looked painted in grayscale. Only Kael's eyes held color, reflecting the flashing red of a fire alarm that hadn't yet begun to scream. For a long moment, they stared at each other. She wanted to speak, to ask who he was, what he had done, why he had saved her, but the words stuck, heavy and useless. He tilted his head, a silent warning, or maybe a promise, and then turned away as his men emerged from the shadows to clean the mess before the city could smell it. Elara stumbled backward, breath ragged. The tray clattered to the floor beside her forgotten heels. Somewhere above, the orchestra started again, as if nothing had happened, but she knew the world had shifted. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her pulse race beneath damp fabric. Outside, thunder rolled like distant artillery. Inside, the wolf had noticed her, and nothing in Verona City would ever be simple again. Hiding behind the gilded wall, tears streaking her cheeks, Elara dared one last glance through the smoke and shadows. Kael Volkov stood over Julian's unconscious body, calm amid chaos. His eyes met hers across the distance, cold, unreadable, possessive. In that single gaze, Elara Vance understood. Her life had just collided with a man who could save her or ruin her completely. Elara's breath caught in her throat. The echo of the gunshots still hung heavy in the corridor, vibrating against the marble walls like trapped ghosts. She pressed her trembling hand against the cold surface, heart pounding so violently she thought it might give her away. Kael Volkov stood over Julian Thorne's lifeless form, his figure outlined by the golden light spilling from the ballroom behind him. His tailored suit was immaculate, save for a tiny drop of blood that clung stubbornly to his cuff. His eyes were calm, too calm, the kind of calm that belonged to men who had seen the end of souls and walked away unbothered. Elara wanted to scream, to run, but her legs refused to move. Her body was a battlefield, terror warring against disbelief. Kael turned slowly, his gaze slicing through the darkness until it found her. Those steel-gray eyes locked onto hers, freezing her in place. For a long, unbearable moment, silence stretched between them. The world outside, the music, the laughter, the rain, faded into nothingness. He took a step forward, then another. Elara's pulse thundered in her ears as he approached, his shoes echoing softly against the marble floor. "You shouldn't have seen this," he said, his voice deep and composed, the kind of voice that carried command even in a whisper. I didn't mean to," she stammered, her throat tightening. "I was just working," he finished for her, his tone neither gentle nor cruel, merely factual. His eyes traveled over her face, not with lust, but with an unsettling intensity, as though memorizing her every fear. Kael stopped a foot away, close enough that she could smell the faint trace of smoke and expensive cologne. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Go home, Elara Vance." She blinked. You know my name?" A ghost of a smirk touched his lips. "I make it my business to know the people who interest me." Her stomach twisted. "I don't want to be interesting to you." He chuckled softly, a sound without warmth. "Unfortunately, that choice isn't yours anymore." Ilara's hands clenched. "You killed him," she whispered, her voice breaking. Kyle's eyes didn't flinch. "I stopped him. The rest is none of your concern." She stared past him at the motionless body sprawled on the floor. The sight burned into her memory, searing through her mind like acid. "He was going to hurt you," Kael said after a moment, softer now. "That's all you need to understand." She shook her head, backing away. "You're dangerous." "I am," he agreed without hesitation. "But not to you, unless you make me." His words struck her harder than a shout could have. There was no threat in his tone, only cold truth. She could see it in his eyes, that strange duality. A man capable of monstrous things, yet in some twisted way he had saved her. Before she could reply, Kael turned toward the Kaitzal. door at the end of the hallway. Go home. Don't speak of this to anyone, not to the police, not to your friends, not even to your reflection. Elara swallowed hard, trembling. And if I do? Kael looked over his shoulder, the corner of his mouth lifted in a dark, knowing smile. Then the wolf will come for you. He walked away without another word, disappearing into the night as his men dragged Julian's body out of sight. Elara stood there long after he was gone, the smell of gunpowder still clinging to the air. Her mind screamed at her to leave, but her feet felt glued to the floor. When she finally found the strength to move, her legs carried her out of the hotel and into the storm. Rain washed over her face, mingling with the tears she hadn't realized were falling. The streets of Verona City glittered under the downpour, cruel, beautiful, indifferent. She pulled her coat tighter, hurrying through the dark alleys toward her small apartment. Every shadow made her flinch. Every passing car made her heart jump. She couldn't shake the image of Kael's eyes, calm, powerful, terrifyingly controlled. By the time she reached home, her clothes were drenched. She unlocked the door quietly, peeking into Lily's room. Her daughter slept peacefully, clutching her worn-out teddy bear. Relief flooded Elara's chest, but it was tainted by guilt. She leaned against the doorframe, whispering, "You're safe, I promise." But she wasn't sure she could keep that promise anymore. That night, sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kael Volkov's face, the wolf of Verona City. His voice replayed in her mind, low, commanding, inescapable. When dawn broke, she forced herself out of bed and went to work, trying to drown the memories in routine. But something felt different. People whispered around her. A sleek black car had been parked across the street since morn. Its tinted windows reflected nothing. At noon, as she walked out of the cafe to deliver an order, the car door opened. Kael stepped out. Her breath hitched. He looked devastating in daylight. The kind of man who didn't belong in a world built for ordinary people. His presence made time slow. He didn't speak at first, just observed her with that same unreadable expression. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, trying to sound firm but failing. "I told you not to talk to anyone," he replied. "You did well. I didn't do it for you." He smirked faintly. "Maybe not. But you're alive because of it." Elara frowned. "What do you want from me, Kael?" His name felt strange on her tongue. Dangerous. Electric. Kael took a slow step closer. "To make sure you stay alive." She laughed nervously. "I'm not part of your world." He leaned in slightly. "You are now, whether you like it or not." Her chest tightened. "I didn't ask for this." "Neither did I," he murmured. "But fate has a cruel sense of humor." Elara shook her head, exasperated. "You think saving me gives you control over me?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze softened. Just a flicker, a fracture in the armor. "No," he said finally. "But it gives me responsibility." Before she could process his words, he reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small phone. "If you ever see a black car again, or someone watching you, call the number on this, immediately." "I'm not your problem," she said, refusing the phone. Kael's eyes hardened. "You saw something that could destroy powerful men. That makes you everyone's problem, including mine." Rain began to fall again, light at first, then heavier, turning the city into a blur of silver and smoke. Kael slipped the phone into her pocket himself, his fingers brushing against hers. A brief electric contact that made her pulse stutter. "Stay cool." "Yet, Elara. The walls of this city have ears sharper than wolves." Then he turned and walked away, leaving her in the rain once more. But as she watched him disappear into the distance, a question burned through her mind. If Kael Volkov was her savior, what kind of monsters did he protect her from? That night, as Elara tucked Lily into bed, a soft knock echoed through her apartment door. She froze. Slowly she approached and peeked through the peephole, but the hallway was empty. Only a single white envelope lay on the floor. She bent down, opened it, and gasped. Inside was a photograph of her and Lily, taken that morning, with a message scrawled across it in red ink. The photograph slipped from Elara's fingers and fluttered to the floor like a wounded bird. Her chest tightened until she could barely breathe. The silence in the apartment felt alive, heavy, watchful, as though someone else stood just beyond the shadows. Lily stirred faintly in her room, her small voice murmuring in her sleep, unaware of the storm that had breached their fragile walls. Elara crouched to pick up the photo, her hands shaking uncontrollably. The ink was still fresh, crimson, smudging slightly beneath her thumb. Whoever left it had been here recently. She swallowed hard, her pulse racing in her ears. Her instincts screamed for her to call someone, anyone, but who could she trust? The police? No. Kael had warned her not to talk. And even if she did, how would she explain the man known as the Wolf, the billionaire who walked through darkness and lawlessness as easily as others breathed? She looked at Lily's bedroom door, a mother's terror gripping her heart. If someone had found them once, they could find them again. Every shadow in the room seemed to stretch closer, whispering threats she couldn't see. Her trembling hand reached into her pocket. The phone Kael had given her, small, black, lifeless until now. Her thumb hovered over the only contact saved in it. She hesitated. Calling him would mean stepping further into his world, the world she feared. But not calling Ko would mean losing everything she lived for. The knock on the door came again. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Elara froze. Her breath caught. She didn't move. She couldn't. Then a deep, familiar voice spoke through the door, low, commanding, but strangely calm. "It's me." Her knees nearly gave out from relief and fear combined. She rushed to the door, checked the peephole, and saw him. Kael Volkov, his face half hidden by the shadows of the corridor, rainwater dripping from his coat. Elara yanked the door open, her voice trembling. "How did you—" "I told you to call if something happened," Kael interrupted, stepping inside before she could finish. His presence filled the small apartment instantly, as though the air itself shifted to accommodate him. "I didn't call," she said, voice unsteady. "I know." His eyes swept the room, sharp and assessing. "My men saw someone near your building. They followed him here." Her heart skipped. Someone was watching me? Kael nodded once, his expression unreadable. More than one. He bent to pick up the photograph lying on the floor. The red letters glared up at both of them. His jaw flexed. Julian had friends, powerful ones, the kind who don't forgive. Elara's voice cracked. "You said it was over." "It was never over," he replied quietly. "You just walked into a different part of the war." She took a shaky step back, hugging herself. "You should have left me alone. Now they think I'm part of this." Kael's gaze softened, just barely. "You are part of this. The moment he drugged your drink, you became part of it. I can't change that." Elara's eyes glistened. "I have a child, Kael. She's 5. I can't live in fear every day because of your world." His voice lowered, almost a whisper. "Then let me protect you." "I don't want your protection," she snapped, surprising even herself. The rawness in her voice made him pause. "Oh, I want my life back." He exhaled slowly, studying her face. "You can't go back to what you were, Elara. People like Julian Thorne don't die quietly, and people who see what you saw don't get to forget." She turned away, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I didn't ask to see any of it." "No," he said softly, "but fate rarely asks for permission." Kael walked toward the window, pulling the curtains aside. His reflection glimmered faintly against the rain-speckled glass. "They'll come again," he said. "Not for me, for you, because hurting you would hurt my reputation. And in this city, reputation is blood." Elara's voice wavered. "You're saying I'm bait." He turned back to her, his eyes cold steel. "You're leverage, and that's why I can't let you out of my sight." Her breath hitched. "You're not serious." "Pack a bag," he ordered. She stared at him, speechless. "I'm not leaving my home. It's not safe anymore." "My daughter sleeps here, Kael," she cried. "You can't just walk in and decide how we live." He took a slow step toward her. "You want her alive?" The blunt question shattered her resistance. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Kael didn't wait for an answer. He moved to Lily's room, his footsteps quiet, his expression softening as he looked at the sleeping child. "She looks like you," he murmured, almost to himself. Elara followed, arms wrapped tightly around her body. "Don't touch her," she whispered. He didn't. He just stood there for a moment longer, his expression unreadable, a strange mix of ruthlessness and reverence. "Get your things," he said, his voice barely audible. "You have 10 minutes." When Elara didn't move, he turned to face her again. "You think I'm the threat," he said quietly. "But if I were, you wouldn't still be breathing." She met his gaze, fierce, defiant, terrified. "You're all threats, every one of you." He smirked faintly. "Maybe, but only one of us is trying to keep you alive." The tension between them was electric, fear wrapped in something unspoken, something dangerous. Elara finally moved, gathering a small backpack, stuffing in clothes and Lily's favorite toy. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but from the crushing realization that her world had already changed, and there was no turning back. When she turned to face him again, Kael was standing by the door, his expression hard. "Follow me," he said. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they can't touch you." She hesitated, glancing once more at her home, the cracked walls, the small table, the photo of her and Lily by the window. Everything she had built out of struggle and love, now reduced to a fading memory. Kael watched her with quiet understanding. "The past doesn't keep you safe," he said softly. "I do." Those words lingered like a promise she didn't want but couldn't refuse. He opened the door, scanning the hallway before motioning her out. Rain still poured outside, the city lights blurred through the downpour. As they reached his car, a black SUV idled nearby, its engine humming like a predator waiting to pounce. Kael's eyes flicked to it instantly. "Get in," he said, voice low but urgent. Elara's grip on Lily tightened as she climbed into the back seat. Kael slipped in beside her, giving a short nod to his driver. The car pulled away just as headlights flared behind them. Elara looked back, and her heart stopped. The SUV had turned to follow. Kael's voice was calm but cold. "Buckle her in. Don't look back." Her hands shook as she obeyed, clutching Lily close. The sound of tires against wet pavement filled the silence. Kael's phone buzzed once. He read a message, then muttered something in Russian under his breath. "What is it?" she whispered. His jaw tightened. "They found us faster than I thought." The car sped up, the city lights streaking past like ghosts. Elara's pulse raced as she held her child tighter, staring at Kael. This terrifying man who had somehow become the only thing standing between her and the abyss. A deafening crash shattered the night as bullets tore through the rear window. Elara screamed, shielding Lily as glass exploded around them. Kael grabbed her and pushed her down to the floor. "Stay down," he barked. The driver swerved violently, but the SUV rammed them from behind. Tires screeched. Kael drew his gun, eyes burning with fury. "Hold on," he growled, pulling her close as the car spun out of control and slammed into a concrete barrier, the world around them dissolving into smoke, sirens, and the echo of the wolf's rage. The world spun in chaos. Metal screamed against concrete, and for a few endless seconds, time broke apart. Sound, sight, and breath scattering like shattered glass. The car lay half on the curb, smoke curling from the hood, steam rising in ghostly tendrils. The rain hissed as it hit the hot metal. Elara blinked, dazed, her ears ringing. Her body felt weightless, then heavy again. "Lily," she gasped, reaching blindly through the darkness. Tiny fingers clutched hers back. "Mama?" The small, trembling voice snapped her back into reality. Relief flooded her chest, but fear followed close behind. Kael's voice cut through the chaos. "Elara, down!" Bullets rained again, tearing through the side windows, sparking against the frame. Kael leaned over them, his arm covering both mother and child, as glass shards sliced through the air. His body was solid, immovable, a wall between them and death. "Stay still," he ordered. His tone was ice, but his movements were pure control. One hand reached for the gun holstered at his thigh, the other shielding them as he peered through the cracked windshield. The SUV that had rammed them was stopped across the street. Four figures emerged, masked, armed, and moving with ruthless precision. Rain cascaded down their black coats, turning them into phantoms under the streetlight. Elara's breath trembled. Who are they? Kael's eyes flicked to her for half a second, the kind of men who don't leave witnesses. He kicked open the passenger door, crouched low, and returned. Fire. Each shot was sharp, deliberate, cutting through the roar of rain and thunder. Two of the attackers ducked behind their car. Another fired back, bullets sparking off the wet pavement. Elara covered Lily's ears, her own heart pounding like a drumbeat of panic. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. Kael moved with predatory grace, crouching, firing, reloading in a single smooth motion. Every movement was calculated, every breath part of a rhythm born from violence. Then, one of the masked men flanked them from the alley. Kael noticed too late. The gunman raised his weapon, aimed directly at Elara. The world froze. Kael dove. A gunshot cracked through the night. Elara screamed as Kael's shoulder jerked back. The bullet had grazed him, tearing through his coat. He landed beside her, gritting his teeth, one hand pressed against the wound. "I'm fine," he growled, even as blood seeped between his fingers. Adrenaline surged through her. "You're bleeding! Keep your head down!" Another shot shattered the side mirror. Kael turned and fired twice. The gunman dropped. Silence swallowed the street again, broken only by the pounding rain. Kael exhaled heavily, checking the scene. 3 bodies lay motionless. The 4th man had vanished. "Get out," he said quickly. "We need to move before more come." Elara hesitated, frozen by shock. "Where? Out!" His voice thundered through the smoke. She flinched but obeyed, clutching Lily tightly as she crawled out of the wreckage. Rain hit her face like cold needles. The street was empty except for the carnage they'd left behind. Kael followed, his movements slower now, his shoulder bleeding steadily. He pulled his phone from his pocket, speaking in rapid Russian. Within moments, headlights appeared from the opposite direction. 2 black sedans, sleek and silent. Men in dark coats emerged, weapons drawn, scanning in the area. Kael motioned for one. "Take the child," he ordered. Elara immediately stepped back, panic flashing in her eyes. "No, she stays with me." Kael's jaw tightened. "They'll take her, somewhere safe." "She's staying," Elara snapped, her voice shaking but firm. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, her fear against his command. Then Kael gave a curt nod. "Fine, stay close." They climbed into the second car. Kael slumped slightly against the seat, breathing hard. His white shirt clung to his chest, stained crimson. Elara tore a strip from her sleeve and pressed it against his wound. "Hold still," she whispered. He arched a brow despite the pain. "You give orders now?" She met his gaze, trembling. "Someone has to." A faint smile ghosted across his lips. "You're stronger than you think." Her hands shook, but she kept pressure steady. "Don't talk, you're losing blood." "I've lost worse." The car sped through the rain-slick streets, neon signs flashing through the windows, nightclubs, casinos, the underbelly of Verona City passing in a blur. Elara's mind spun. The gunfire, the crash, the men who wanted her dead, and through it all, Kael, bleeding beside her, yet somehow in control. When the convoy finally stopped, they were in a part of the city she didn't recognize, an industrial district of abandoned warehouses and flickering lights. Kael's men helped him out of the car and led them into a large building with steel doors. Inside, the space was unexpectedly clean, furnished like a hidden fortress. Security cameras lined the walls, and the faint hum of generators filled the silence. Kael sat on a couch, wincing as one of his men cleaned the wound. Elara hovered near the door, Lily asleep in her arms, too afraid to let go. "You're safe here," Kael said, voice hoarse but steady. "For how long?" He looked up, his eyes hard. "As long as I breathe." She didn't know whether to feel reassured or terrified. He was too calm, too certain. The wolf didn't make promises lightly, and never without blood behind them. When the medic finished indaging him, Kael dismissed the others. They left silently, closing the heavy steel door behind them. The quiet that followed felt heavier than gunfire. Elara lowered Lily onto a couch nearby and turned to him. "Why are they after me? I didn't do anything." Kael leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Because you were in the wrong place. You saw something they couldn't risk getting out." Julian's death? His gaze darkened. Julian wasn't just a predator, he was a broker. He handled money for men who think they own this city. Politicians, military investors, foreign syndicates. When I stopped him, I didn't just protect you, I lit a fuse. Elara's stomach churned. "So they'll keep coming." He nodded. "Until I cut off the head." She stared at him, horrified. "You talk about killing like it's nothing." He met her eyes, his tone flat. "When you live long enough in this world, you stop pretending that peace exists." Something inside her broke a little. "And you expect me to live in that world now?" Kael's expression softened slightly. "I expect you to survive." Silence stretched between them, the kind of silence heavy with unspoken truths. The rain outside beat against the roof like a distant war drum. Elara finally sat down, exhaustion seeping through her bones. "You could have let me die," she murmured. "It would have been easier." Kael's jaw clenched. "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true." "Because I don't save people to watch them give up." His voice was rough, almost pained. He turned away, his hand pressing against his bandaged shoulder. For the first time, Elara saw something human in him, something broken behind the armor. She wanted to ask who he was before all this, but before the words formed, his phone buzzed again. He read the message, and his face hardened. "They found this place," he said quietly. Her blood ran cold. "What?" Kael rose to his feet, ignoring the pain. "We need to move, now." He motioned to his men through the door. The sound of engines revving filled the air outside. Elara clutched Lily, heart racing. "We just got here." Kael's eyes flicked to her, sharp and determined. "And we'll leave before this place becomes your grave." As Kael led her toward the back exit, an explosion ripped through the building, shattering glass and steel. The blast threw them both to the floor. Elara screamed as debris rained around them. Through the smoke and fire, she saw shadowed figures entering from the front, armed, relentless. Kael pulled her up, eyes blazing with fury. "Run!" he shouted, just as a masked man stepped from the flames, lifted his weapon, and fired directly at Kael. The storm had chased them through the night until the rain softened into whispers. By dawn, Kael's black SUV crawled along the winding countryside road, far from the city's neon pulse. When they finally stopped, the world seemed to hold its breath. The safe house stood before them, stone walls weathered by time, ivy clinging like secrets that refused to die. It was quiet, too quiet. Elara felt the silence press against her chest as Kael led her inside. The air smelled of wood smoke and danger. Kael locked the door behind them, his every movement sharp and deliberate. She watched him, his white shirt torn, blood darkening the fabric near his ribs. The man who once seemed untouchable now looked human, broken in edges she never imagined existed. "Sit," she said softly, reaching for the first aid kit on the table. Her voice trembled, but not from fear. Something deeper moved beneath her words, something she didn't dare name. Kael sank into the chair, the flicker of firelight drawing gold over his scarred face. He watched her hands as she cleaned the wound, gentle yet determined. Her touch burned through his composure like sunlight melting frost. "You don't have to," he murmured. "I know," she replied without looking up, "but I want to." For a moment, the world shrank to the rhythm of her breath and the crackle of firewood. He studied her profile, the curve of her cheek, the quiet strength behind her trembling lashes. This woman had seen things that should have destroyed her, yet here she was, steady and brave in the den of a wolf. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally. "My world, it doesn't forgive." Elara dabbed antiseptic onto his skin. He flinched slightly but didn't pull away. Then maybe your world needs forgiveness, she whispered. His eyes lifted to hers, a storm meeting its mirror. You think it's that simple? I don't know, she breathed, but I think you make it harder than it has to be. Kael leaned back, a humorless smile tugging at his lips. You talk like someone who still believes in good endings. She looked at the fire, her reflection dancing in the flames. I have to. My daughter deserves one. Something shifted in him then. A crack in the ice, a fracture in the walls he'd built to keep the world out. He'd faced bullets, betrayals, and bloodshed, but nothing terrified him like the warmth in her eyes. He reached out almost unconsciously, his fingers brushing hers. The contact froze her in place. Her pulse quickened. The air between them thickened with what neither could say aloud. You shouldn't touch me like that, she whispered, but didn't pull away. Maybe not, he said, voice low, rough, but I can't seem to stop. She swallowed hard. Why me, Kael? You could have anyone. Anyone doesn't look at me the way you do, he said, like I'm still human. The confession hung between them, trembling with something dangerous. The flames painted his eyes in shades of gold and regret. She reached to change the bandage, her fingertips grazing his chest, and for a heartbeat he caught her hand, holding it there. Neither spoke. The silence was deafening. Every unspoken word felt like an explosion waiting to happen. Kael, she whispered, her name trembling on her tongue. His gaze dropped to her lips. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to want something that wasn't power or control, something fragile, something real. I don't let people close, he confessed, voice like gravel in truth. But you make me forget what I am. Her breath caught. Their faces drew closer, the distance shrinking, her pulse a drumbeat of confusion and longing. The firelight painted them in shades of sin and salvation. Kael, she breathed again. He leaned in, slow, deliberate, as if he were afraid the moment would shatter. Their lips hovered, the world narrowing to a heartbeat, when suddenly the shrill vibration of his phone sliced through the silence. Kael froze. The sound was harsh, invasive, dragging him back into the chaos he thought he'd left behind. He answered with a glare, pressing the phone to his ear. What? Elara watched as his jaw tightened, the muscles in his neck coiling with tension. The voice on the other end was frantic, muffled by static. His eyes darkened with each passing second. When? His tone dropped an octave. Who told them? Silence. Then the sound of glass breaking under his grip. Pack your things, he snapped, standing abruptly. Now. Elara jumped, startled by the shift. Kael, what happened? He didn't answer immediately. His chest rose and fell like a caged animal fighting for air. Someone sold us out. Her heart stuttered. What do you mean? He looked at her, pain and fury carved across his features. My own man. He gave up our location. The room spun. Who would? He cut her off, his tone colder than the rain outside. Thorn knows where you are. Her blood ran cold. The name alone was enough to bring back the fear she'd tried to bury. Julian Thorn, the man who tried to poison her, the man she thought was gone. But monsters, she was learning, rarely die when you want them to. Kael paced the room, phone still clutched in his hand, mind racing. We move in 10 minutes, he said. He's coming for you. Elara's knees weakened. But why? What does he want from me? Kael stopped, turning toward her with a look that said more than words ever could. Revenge. The fire crackled louder, throwing long shadows across the walls. She stood frozen, staring at the man who had saved her life, the man she had almost kissed, the man who was now preparing to face the devil himself, for her. As Kael loaded his weapon and checked the windows, Elara's heart broke a little more. She knew this wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was something far more dangerous. Because every second she spent near him made it harder to walk away. She whispered, almost to herself, You can't keep saving me, Kael. He paused, his hand hovering near the doorknob. Maybe not, he said quietly, but I can damn well try. The wind howled outside, carrying the promise of violence. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like war drums. Elara closed her eyes, clutching her trembling hands. She didn't know if she was more afraid of Thorn finding her, or of what her heart was becoming inside this storm of blood and fire. Kael's phone buzzed again. This time a photo appeared on the screen, taken just seconds ago. It showed the outside of their safe house, lights glowing through the windows. A message followed. Nice hideout, Wolf. She's mine. The message glowed like a wound on Kael's phone screen. Nice hideout, Wolf. She's mine. For a few seconds there was only silence, the kind that presses against the ribs until breathing hurts. Kael's eyes darkened, jaw set in a line of fury. The firelight flickered across his face, making him look like a ghost of wrath itself. Elara felt her stomach twist. She didn't need to ask who had sent it. She already knew. The name Julian Thorne tasted like ash on her tongue. Kael lowered the phone slowly, his hand trembling, not from fear, but from the kind of rage that comes from betrayal. His empire had cracks, and now those cracks were You're bleeding. Someone close had turned on him. We have to go, he muttered, his voice raw. Elara hesitated. Kael, what if he's already here? He looked at her, sharp, protective, dangerous. Then he dies here. She didn't move. She just stared at him, her heart caught between terror and something she didn't want to name. The man before her was no savior now. He was a storm in flesh. He stormed toward the door, gun in hand. She followed, every instinct screaming that running might not be enough. Outside, the wind whipped through the trees, branches clawing against the windows. Kael's men, what remained of them, were already at the gate, radios buzzing with tension. One of them, Victor, approached, face pale. Boss, we've got movement on the North Ridge. 3 cars, unmarked. Kael's expression hardened. Get the defenses ready. No one gets in or out. Elara's hands trembled. Kael, what if it's too late? He turned, and for a heartbeat, something broke behind his eyes. Then I'll burn the whole damn forest down before I let him touch you. She believed him. That was what scared her most. Inside the house, she gathered her few belongings, Lily's photo, a worn sweater, and glanced at the door where Kael stood, his silhouette carved against the chaos outside. He looked like a man who had already made peace with hell. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the radio, static, then panic. Boss, Victor's down. They're inside. Kael spun, eyes narrowing. What? Gunfire erupted outside. Glass shattered. Elara screamed as a bullet tore through the window inches from her head. Kael grabbed her arm, pulling her down behind the couch. Stay down, he barked, firing back through the broken glass. The night exploded. Flashes of muzzle fire lighting the dark woods. Men shouted. The rain began again, heavy and relentless, drenching everything in chaos. Kael reloaded, his movements precise, ruthless. They found us faster than I thought, he muttered, teeth clenched. Elara's breath came in ragged bursts. What do they want? Why me? He didn't answer. His focus was lead. Thal, his instincts sharper than ever. But beneath the rage, she saw the truth. Fear, not for himself, but for her. He fired again, took a breath, then turned to her. If something happens to me, you run. Do you understand? No, she whispered fiercely. I'm not leaving you. Elara, don't, she said, eyes wet. Don't make me lose another person who fought for me. His jaw tightened. There was no time for softness, but her words hit deeper than any bullet. The door burst open. 2 masked men charged in. Kael didn't hesitate. 3 shots. 2 bodies fell. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. Smoke coiled around them like ghosts. Kael grabbed her hand. Come on! They ran through the back hallway, boots slamming against the wood floor. Every corner could be death. Every breath felt borrowed. They reached the cellar door. Kael yanked it open and pushed her inside. Stay here, he ordered. What about you? She pleaded. I'll hold them off. She grabbed his arm, desperate. You can't fight them all. He looked down at her, his eyes softening for just a second. I don't need to. I just need to buy you time. Kael, please. He silenced her with a hand against her cheek, rough and gentle at once. I've done terrible things, Elara, but saving you, that's the one thing I'll never regret. Tears burned her eyes. Don't say that like it's goodbye. He forced a small, haunted smile. In my world, every moment could be. And then he was gone, back into the gunfire. Elara sat in the dark cellar, hugging herself, listening to the chaos above. Every gunshot felt like a heartbeat stopping. Every silence felt worse. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time lost all meaning. Then, a voice, low, cold, too familiar. Well, well, Julian Thorne's drawl echoed from somewhere above. The wolf hides his little pet underground. How poetic. Elara's blood turned to ice. He pressed a trembling hand over her mouth, biting back a sob. She could hear footsteps, slow and confident, descending the stairs. Kael's voice roared in the distance. Don't touch her! Thorne! Followed by the deafening sound of gunfire. Elara's heart shattered. She pressed herself against the wall, praying, shaking. A crash, a grunt, the sound of someone falling, and then silence. The cellar door creaked open. A figure stepped into the dim light. Not Kael. Julian Thorne stood there, a smirk curling on his lips, blood splattered on his tailored suit. He tilted his head, eyes glinting like a serpent's. Told you, sweetheart, no one hides from me. Elara tried to crawl back, but her legs gave out. Where is he? She whispered, voice breaking. Thorne crouched down, his face inches from hers. Your wolf? He smiled, cruel and slow. He's learning what happens when you protect what's mine. Tears slid down her cheeks. You're a monster. He chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Maybe, but you made me one. Her heart pounded as he reached for her chin. She wanted to scream, to fight, but her voice was gone, swallowed by fear and grief. Above them, the wind howled through shattered glass, carrying the scent of smoke and blood. Elara's body trembled. Somewhere deep inside, something broke, and something else began to burn. Because she knew one thing. If Kael was still alive, he would come for her. And if he wasn't, she would finish what he started. The fire inside her no longer needed saving. It needed release. Julian's phone buzzed in his pocket. He smirked as he glanced at the message flashing across the screen. The wolf isn't dead. He's coming for you. Thorne looked up at Elara, smile fading. Well, he said softly, this just got interesting. The rain had not stopped since that night in the forest. It drummed against the windows of Kael Volkov's underground command room like a heartbeat that refused to die. He stood before the table, maps scattered, guns laid out like instruments of revenge. His jaw was bruised, his hat stained, and wrapped in bloodied gauze, but his eyes, those cold gray eyes, were alive with fury. The wolf isn't dead, he growled, voice low and hoarse. He's just hunting. Every man in the room froze. They had seen Kael angry before, but this was different. He wasn't angry. He was unchained. Boss, one of his lieutenants began carefully. We don't even know where they've taken her. The trail went cold. Kael slammed his fist on the table. The sound made everyone flinch. No mercy, he said. Find her. I don't care who you have to burn. The room emptied within seconds, men scattering like ghosts into the storm. When the door shut, Kael was alone again, alone with the silence and the faint memory of her voice. Elara's eyes, wide with fear, her trembling hand against his cheek before he left her in the cellar. He'd sworn to protect her. He'd failed. He leaned against the table, exhaling slowly, the weight of the world pressing against his spine. Somewhere out there, she was in Thorne's hands, and Thorne knew exactly how to hurt him, without leaving a single mark. Far away, The ocean roared against the cliffs of Thorn's private island. The air smelled of salt and power. Inside a mansion carved into the rock, Elara sat in a cold room that overlooked the waves. No chains bound her, no locks held her, but freedom was an illusion. Julian Thorn paced in front of her, calm as a serpent digesting its prey. He poured himself a drink, the sound of ice clinking cruelly in the glass. "You know," he said softly, "I never planned for it to be like this." Elara said nothing. She stared at the floor, her hair falling over her face, trying to hide the tremor in her hands. Thorn circled her slowly. "You think he loves you, don't you?" Her lips parted, but no words came. He chuckled. "Oh, Elara. Kael Volkov doesn't love. He consumes. You're just another pretty distraction, another weakness he'll destroy the moment it suits him." She looked up, her eyes defiant even through the tears. "You don't know him." Thorn crouched beside her, resting his hand on the arm of her chair. "Oh, I know him better than you ever will. I taught him everything about power, about control, about breaking people before they can break you." He leaned closer, his whisper venomous. "And you think you're the one exception? The light in his darkness? No, darling. You're just the next scar on his soul." Elara turned away, pressing her lips together. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of her tears. Thorn smirked. "Still holding on to hope? That he'll come for you?" He lifted his glass, eyes glinting. "Good. Let him. I've been waiting for the wolf to walk into my cage." Outside, lightning split the sky in half. Back in Verona, Kael's men returned, mud-streaked, soaked, but triumphant. "Boss," Victor said, tossing a file onto the table. "We found it. A shipment manifesto. Thorn's been moving cargo through a private island off the Tyrrhenian coast. Satellite confirms unusual activity." Kael's head snapped up. His heart, ice moments before, suddenly burned. "Coordinates," he said. Victor pointed to the map. "Right there. Fortified, heavily guarded. You'll need a full team." Kael nodded once. "Then we go tonight." "Boss, that's suicide." Kael's stare cut through him like a blade. "So is waiting." He turned to his men, his voice iron and fire. "We go silent. We go fast. No survivors. Bring her back, or die trying." Every man in that room straightened, the unspoken vow heavy in the air. Hours later, engines roared in the darkness. 3 black boats sliced through the waves like shadows, headlights off, the storm guiding their approach. Kael stood at the helm of the lead boat, the wind whipping through his hair. He wore all black, combat gear, holster at his side, dagger at his thigh. Beside him, his second-in-command, Ilya, adjusted the radio frequency. "We've got limited visibility. If we hit the wrong cove, we won't," Kael said. His voice was a prayer, omise carved in stone. Ilya hesitated. "Kael, what if it's a trap?" Kael looked at him, unflinching. "Then we spring it." Behind them, lightning flashed over the sea, illuminating the faces of men who had already accepted their fate. Kael's eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, the island, dark and waiting. Somewhere beyond those cliffs, Elara was alive. He could feel it, and if she wasn't, then the world was about to end with her. On the island, Thorn stood by the balcony, phone in hand. He watched the waves with a knowing smirk. "They're coming," he murmured. Elara's head snapped up. "Kael?" He turned toward her slowly, eyes gleaming. "Your wolf never could resist a challenge." He poured another drink, the calm before the bloodstorm. Let him come. Back on the boats, the rain thickened. Kael's earpiece crackled with static, then a faint whisper. "Boss, movement ahead. Dock lights." Kael lifted his binoculars. Through the rain, he saw it. Figures on the shore, armed and waiting. "Positions," he ordered. "On my mark." But something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too clean. Ilya's voice broke the silence. "Kael." Kael turned. His friend's hand was trembling. "I need to tell you something." Kael's expression shifted, wary. "Now's not the time." Ilya swallowed hard. "It has to be now." The other men looked up, sensing the tension. Kael's hand tightened on his weapon. What did you do? Elia couldn't meet his gaze. He offered me my family back. My brother's freedom. Kael's eyes went cold. You told him where we were going. Ilya's voice broke. I had no choice, Kael. He has my brother. Before Kael could respond, a deafening explosion tore through the night. The lead boat lurched sideways, fire erupting across the waves. Men screamed. The sea swallowed gunfire and blood. Kael hit the deck, ears ringing, water and flame mixing in the storm. He lifted his head, vision blurring, and through the firelight, he saw it. The island's cliffs erupting with gunmen. They were waiting. He'd walked right into the trap. As Kael dragged himself from the wreckage, soaked and bleeding, a spotlight from the island cut through the darkness, locking directly onto him. And through a loudspeaker, Thorn's voice echoed over the roaring waves. Welcome to my island, Wolf. Let's see how long you can swim. Rain lashed against the sea as the boat cut through the dark waves, its engines roaring like angry beasts. The air smelled of salt, smoke, and betrayal. Kael stood at the bow, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the island that loomed ahead like a black crown rising from the depths. The storm above him mirrored the one inside his chest. His second-in-command's words still echoed, the betrayal slicing deeper than any bullet ever could. He had been ambushed before, but not by family, not by someone who had sworn blood loyalty. The taste of it was bitter. Still, Kael Volkov didn't slow. If they wanted war, they would get hell. The boat scraped against the shore, waves slapping the hull as Kael's men leapt out, guns ready. Lightning cracked across the sky, lighting the island for one fleeting second, enough to reveal the villa ahead, tall, white, and monstrous in its silence. It was Thorn's kingdom, and tonight, Kael had come to burn it down. The men advanced through the wet jungle path, boots sinking into mud, shadows moved among the trees. Kael raised a hand, signal to halt. A click, soft but deadly, answered from behind him. His second-in-command, a gun pressed against Kael's back. I'm sorry, boss, the traitor murmured. They offered me freedom. Kael didn't turn. His voice was calm, low, and cutting. Freedom? You just sold your soul for a grave. Before the man could respond, Kael spun, a blur of motion, grabbing the gun and slamming his elbow into the man's jaw. The traitor dropped, a single shot. Silence followed. Kael didn't even look back. He moved forward. Every step was vengeance. The villa loomed closer, lights flared. Carrying behind the tall windows, Kael lifted his gun, eyes cold as iron. No mercy, he whispered. The first guard appeared, and fell before he could even shout. The second tried to run, the third begged. None of them survived. Kael's men followed behind, covering doors, corners, stairwells. The villa echoed with chaos, gunfire, glass shattering, the screams of dying men blending with the thunder outside. Inside, Thorn watched from the balcony above, sipping wine. His lips curved into a cruel smile as he looked down at Elara, bound to a chair, eyes swollen with tears. Your wolf came for you, he murmured, crouching near her. But he'll never reach you alive. Elara's breath came in short, panicked bursts. She struggled against the ropes until her wrists burned. She wanted to scream, but fear strangled her voice. Still, deep inside, hope flickered. Kael was coming. Outside the door, a guard shouted. Then silence. Heavy, steady footsteps echoed down the hallway. Thorn turned, smirking. Ah, speak of the devil. The door burst open. Kael stepped through the smoke, his black coat dripping rain, his eyes glowing with murder. Thorn raised his gun and pressed it against Elara's head. She's mine, Wolf. Kael tilted his head slightly, smirked with that terrifying calm. You should have stayed dead. And then, darkness. Kael shot the lights out. The room plunged into chaos. Muzzle flashes burst like lightning, white, violent, brief. Bullets sliced through the air, glass shattered, and furniture splintered. Elara screamed Kael's name, her voice lost in the storm of sound. A body slammed against the wall. Someone cursed. Then, Silence. When the generator flickered back to life, the scene was still. The air was thick with smoke. Kael stood over Thorne's lifeless body, gun still raised, chest heaving. His face was streaked with blood, his eyes wild, not with victory, but with the haunting weight of what he had become. Elara's ropes were shredded by his knife seconds later. She fell forward into his arms, sobbing. Kael, I thought you were... He pulled her close, his voice raw. I told you I'd come. Her trembling hands touched his face, brushing away blood and rain. For one heartbeat, it was peace. Pure, fragile, impossible peace. Then Kael staggered. Elara caught him as his knees buckled, confusion flashing through her tears. Kael? He looked down. His hand came away red. A bullet wound bloomed darkly across his side, soaking his shirt. No, 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 she whispered, pressing her hands over it. Stay with me, please. He smiled faintly, the world dimming around him. Told you, not to cry. His body went limp. Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Or maybe it was the sea, roaring in grief. Elara screamed his name again and again, but the storm swallowed her voice. The marble floor beneath them gleamed with blood and moonlight. The wolf had fallen. Elara cradled Kael's motionless body as the villa burned behind them. Smoke curled into the night sky, carrying the scent of victory and death. But as the flames reflected in her tearful eyes, she saw movement. A shadow slipping away through the trees, holding a phone that sent one final message. The wolf isn't dead. Yet. The sirens came too late. By the time the paramedics reached the villa, the gunfire had already died. The night smelled of smoke and iron. Elara's hands were covered in Kael's blood as she held his face, whispering words he couldn't hear. Stay with me. Please, don't you dare leave me. His pulse flickered beneath her fingers, faint, stubborn, like a flame refusing to die. She screamed for help, her voice cracking through the smoke-filled air. The stretcher wheels rattled over broken glass. Flashing red lights danced across the marble, staining everything with urgency. Kael's chest barely rose as they lifted him, and Elara refused to let go of his hand. When they tried to pull her away, she fought, teeth clenched, eyes wild. I'm coming with him, she cried. One look at her, disheveled, trembling, soaked in his blood. And they didn't argue. The hospital swallowed her whole. White walls, sterile air, machines that hummed like ghosts. Elara sat beside the bed, clutching his motionless hand. Kael Volkov, the man they called the Wolf, now looked like a boy lost in sleep. His strength, his ruthlessness, his control, all stripped away, leaving only fragility. Hours bled into days. She barely slept. Nurses whispered about her, about the mysterious man under guard, about the woman who wouldn't leave his side. She spoke to him softly, her voice hoarse. You told me not to talk, she murmured, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. But I can't stop. You're all I have now, Kael. I don't care what they say. You saved me, even when I didn't ask you to. Her words filled the silence that the machines couldn't touch. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was her only proof that he was still fighting. Every time it slowed, she held her breath, praying to a god she stopped believing in long ago. Outside the hospital room, Kael's men stood guard. The syndicate was in chaos. Rumors spread. The wolf was dying. The throne was empty. Enemies stirred in the dark, hungry for blood and control. But none dared cross that door. The world could burn, and Elara wouldn't notice. Her world had already narrowed to one man and the fragile rhythm of his heartbeat. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the blinds, she leaned her head on the bed beside him and whispered, You said I talk too much. Maybe that's why you fell asleep. To get some peace. Her lips trembled into a smile. Wake up and tell me to shut up again. I dare you. A faint movement made her lift her head. His fingers, twitching, barely. Then, a weak exhale. Her heart skipped. She pressed her palm to his cheek, tears streaming free. Ely now. Kael, please, if you can hear me. His eyelids fluttered, slow, heavy, and then Gray eyes opened, clouded with pain but alive, his lips parted, voice rough as gravel. Still talking. Huh? A broken laugh burst out of her, half sob, half relief. Don't ever do that to me again. He tried to smile, wincing at the effort. Didn't plan to. Guess I'm harder to kill than I look. You're impossible, she whispered. I'm yours, he murmured back. The words hung between them like a confession carved in silence. In the days that followed, Kael began to heal, slowly, painfully. Elara stayed, helping the nurses, feeding him, ignoring the curious eyes around them. For the first time, Kael allowed himself to be weak. The wolf rested, and the man beneath finally breathed. He confessed one night, voice quiet in the dark. All my life, I thought strength was control, power, fear. But the moment I thought I lost you, I realized I was already gone. Elara reached for his hand, fingers entwining with his. Then don't go back. You don't owe the world your darkness anymore. Her words lingered. The next morning, Kael made his choice. He called his most trusted lieutenant, Victor, and spoke in that calm, steady tone that used to command armies. It's yours now, he said. The business, the name, all of it. I'm done. Victor stared at him, disbelief etched in his face. You can't just walk away, Kael. You are the wolf. Kael met his gaze, unwavering. Then let the wolf die here. When Victor left, silence returned. A strange peace settled over him. Elara sat by the window, watching the dawn creep in. The city looked softer from here, distant, small. She smiled faintly, knowing they could finally start over, free from blood and shadows. That night, for the first time, Kael slept without nightmares. Elara held his hand, whispering promises only the moon could hear, but peace, in their world, was never meant to last. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. The sound was sharp, cutting through the stillness. She frowned, reaching for it. Unknown number, just one me. Saj. The wolf can't retire. You owe us both. Her heart stopped. The screen dimmed, leaving her reflection staring back, wide-eyed, trembling. She turned toward Kael, asleep but uneasy, his chest rising slowly beneath the sheets. Somewhere beyond those hospital walls, danger was waiting, patient, hungry. Elara's trembling hands dropped the phone as the door creaks open behind her. Slow, deliberate. A shadow spills across the floor, familiar, and smiling. The hospital room was quiet except for the faint hum of machines. The door creaked open, and Elara froze. A tall figure stepped into the light. Victor, Kael's lieutenant. Her breath caught until she saw his face, calm and familiar. It's over, he said softly. You're safe now. Relief melted her tension, but the phone on the table still glowed faintly. That message burned in her mind. The wolf can't retire. You owe us both. She didn't tell Victor. She simply turned toward Kael's bed, brushed his cheek and whispered, "Let him rest." Days later, Kael was discharged under strict security. He and Elara left the city quietly, traveling far from Verona's smoke and shadows. The Mafia world murmured about his disappearance. Some called it weakness, others called it death. But for Elara and Kael, it was rebirth. They settled near the coast, a villa nestled between wildflowers and the endless blue horizon. The air tasted different here, softer, real. Every morning, sunlight filtered through linen curtains, painting their room in gold. Kael often woke before her, just to watch her sleep, to remind himself she was real, that he hadn't dreamed her warmth. Lily loved the sea. She ran through the garden barefoot, her laughter blending with the waves. Kael built her a wooden swing beneath the olive trees, though he claimed his hands weren't made for gentleness. Funny, Elara teased, watching him from the terrace. For a man who once ran an empire, you can't even tie a swing properly. He smirked. You keep talking, and I'll make you test it first. Their laughter echoed down the hill, carried by the wind like a promise. Time passed in slow, healing waves. Kael's scars faded, though some nights the nightmares didn't. Elara would wake to his uneven breathing, whispering softly until he calmed. He'd hold her then, murmuring, You shouldn't have stayed that night. I would have stayed 1,000 nights, she always answered. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, sharing wine and stories they never dared to tell before. Kael spoke of his past, the blood, the fear, the power that devoured him. Elara listened without judgment. You gave me peace I didn't deserve, he said one night, his voice rough, fingers tracing the curve of her wrist. She smiled faintly. And you gave me a life I never dreamed of. He pressed a kiss to her hand, eyes dark with tenderness. You were the only thing I ever did right. The villa became a home, filled with laughter, quiet dinners, and the music of Lily's humming as she drew pictures of their small family. The world outside seemed far away, as if Verona and its violence existed in another lifetime. But peace has a way of testing its believers. It began on a soft morning. The air smelled of salt and coffee. Elara stood by the kitchen window, watching Lily chase butterflies in the garden. Kael stepped behind her, arms circling her waist, his chin brushing her shoulder. Looks like she's finally happy, he said quietly. She's safe, Elara whispered. We all are. He smiled. Safe. I almost forgot what that word feels like. They spent the day by the sea. Lily built sandcastles. Kael helped her, pretending not to mind the sand stuck to his trousers. Elara watched them from the shore, her heart swelling with a peace she once thought she'd never find. That evening, as the sun dipped below the water, Kael lit a small fire on the beach. The flames danced in his eyes, reflecting something calm, almost human. He looked at Elara, his voice low. Sumta. I wonder if this is real. If I close my eyes, will it all vanish? She reached for his hand. Then don't close them. He kissed her, slow, deep, filled with everything they'd survived. The world faded, leaving only the sound of the ocean and the beating of two hearts that finally belonged to no one but each other. Then, a sound shattered the serenity. A faint buzz from the table beside them. Kael's phone. He hadn't used it in months. No one should have this number. Elara's smile faltered. Kael frowned, reached for the device. One notification glowed on the screen. Unknown number, one word, Julian. The name hit him like a ghost crawling out of the grave. Elara's breath caught, eyes wide. Kael. It can't be. He didn't answer. His thumb hovered over the screen, but before he could open the message, the phone powered off. Battery dead. They stared at each other, silence stretching like a wire ready to snap. Finally, Kael exhaled. It's nothing, just someone playing games. But deep inside, he knew better. The wolf's world didn't forgive disappearances. Ghosts always found a way back. That night, Elara couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic sound of waves outside. Kael was beside her, but his breathing wasn't steady. He was awake too, pretending not to be. Do you believe in second lives? She whispered into the dark. He turned toward her, eyes shadowed. Only if we earn them. Do you think we did? He hesitated, then softly. I hope so. Morning came dressed in sunlight and the scent of coffee. Lily's laughter filled the air again. Everything looked the same, but something underneath had shifted. Kael checked the phone first thing. Still dead. He left it that way. Elara watched him, unease flickering in her chest. But when he smiled, that familiar warmth returned. She told herself it was over. It had to be. He walked to the beach that afternoon, hand in hand. The sea sparkled like melted glass. Lily ran ahead, her hair catching the wind. Elara leaned into Kael's shoulder, closing her eyes, breathing him in. Maybe peace was real after all. But the story didn't end there. Far across the sand dunes, hidden behind jagged rocks, a figure watched through a pair of tinted lenses. The man's hand played with a scarred silver lighter, flicking it open and shut. Click, click, click. The engraved letter on its side glimmered in the sunlight. T.A. smirk tugged at his scarred lips. The wind caught his coat as he whispered, almost fondly. Miss me, Wolf? The lighter snapped shut, and the figure turned toward the horizon, vanishing into the growing dusk. As the camera pans away from the tranquil villa, Kael lifts his head suddenly, sensing something in the distance. The waves crash louder, the wind shifts, and for a fleeting moment, a single word echoes faintly across the shore: Thorn.